You're watching Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a look at what's on the front pages. But first, our top stories tonight. President Trump appears to have abandoned America's long-held strategy for securing peace in the Middle East, saying today he is not wedded to a two-state solution. Mr. Trump has also attacked his own intelligence services, accusing them of leaking untrue information following the resignation of his national security advisor. And North Korean officials have tried to talk Malaysia out of performing a post-mortem examination on the body of the North Korean president's half-brother who was killed at Kuala Lumpur airport. You're watching Sky News, the press preview. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with PR consultant and former political editor at The Sun, George Pascoe-Watson, as well as documentary maker and journalist Jenny Kleeman. But let's look at the front pages now for you. Well, The Guardian leads with President Trump and how he's abandoned a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. The Metro also leads with President Trump's attack on his own spy agencies for leaking details of discussions between the US government and Russia. And in The Times, Mr. Trump's defense secretary has delivered an ultimatum over NATO spending. The Financial Times reports that further questions have been raised as companies vying to build nuclear power stations have been told to lower their prices. The NHS plans to close 11 maternity units across the country. That's according to The Eye. The Church of England has signalled support for gay marriage. The Daily Telegraph suggests this came after they rejected a bishop's report that only a man and woman could marry in a church. The number of migrants increased last year, with the Daily Express reporting that 431,000 more foreign-born workers live in Britain. In the first revelation of the business levy, many small businesses, shops and schools could be forced to pay more. That's according to the Daily Mail. The Daily Mirror reports on former footballer George Cohen's pledge to donate his brain to help aid research on dementia in footballers. Talent show winner James Arthur features in The Sun after a court heard that he was attacked in a pub last year. And Coronation Street makes its way to the front pages of the Daily Star as writers have reportedly clashed over one of the storylines. Well, with us, George Pascoe-Watson and Jenny Kleeman. Bet you don't know the storyline in Coronation Street, either of you, do you?
I don't.
And neither do I. That makes three of us. Let's have a look at the Times to start with. This is the US delivering an ultimatum over NATO spending.
Yes, well, James Mad Dog Mattis, Trump's defense secretary, has said to NATO members that they need to pay up or they can't take America's protection for granted. We knew this was coming. This is what Trump has been saying all along in his campaign. And the rhetoric of this is a bit, it makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. It's a kind of protection racket kind of rhetoric, like unless you pay your dues, we won't look after you. However, it is fair enough to expect everybody to pay what they said that they would pay when they signed up to NATO. And he's essentially saying that American support can't be taken for granted if you're not paying your dues. Russia, though, will love the idea of there being insecurity and division within NATO. It is just the sort of things the Russians would like. And we all know that Trump is all about, listening to Russia at the moment. So who knows what is going on? But it's something that Theresa May, her visit to Washington, one of the things that came out of it that she was very proud of was that she got Trump to say that NATO had his full commitment. But if you listen to what was being said today, this commitment is contingent, and it's contingent on payment.
Absolutely full marks to Mad Dog Mattis. I completely agree with him. He said today to NATO leaders, no longer can the American taxpayer carry a disproportionate share of the defense of Western values. Americans cannot care more for your children's future security than you do. And I absolutely agree with him. Britain has stuck to its commitment of 2% of GDP spending on defence. The other countries that have done so amazingly are Estonia, Greece and Poland. So the big countries that you would expect to keep to their commitment have not done so. it is a protection racket. That is exactly the point of NATO, and that is why it's worked so well for so many years. And to let it degrade over the years is only actually putting us all at risk. And it's right. It's about time that people
do we think this is
dues.
at least one area of Trump policy, if you like, that will be received quite well by the majority?
Well, it'll be received well by those who are taking part and who want the full protection of NATO. It will not be taken so well by countries who are not fulfilling their commitments, like Spain and Italy.
Yeah, it will be taken well by the countries that are paying up already, like we are, and we'll feel like, yes, we're going to be protected. And as I said, it is fair enough. If you sign up to something, you should do what you've signed up for. It's just, you know, it is in everybody's interest for NATO to be strong, particularly at the moment when the world has gone crazy. People should pay up, but equally, you know, we shouldn't be making threats, I think, necessarily at this stage. Diplomacy is
that's usually
important.
how you get people to pay up, though.
Well, no, you can be more diplomatic about it.
Well, and I think, by the way, that I don't think that I have to disagree with you, Jenny. I don't feel that Britain feels protected by America. You know, we play a massive role in the alliance, and the Americans know that, and that's fantastic for us. But I do think this is an important thing to say. It's long been coming. Whether it makes a difference or not, the fact is that countries don't have the money that they can change their budgets around, and countries like Italy and Spain are very much struggling. So it's difficult to see how they can fix things. But the real acid test is whether or not America would actually say no to a Baltic state if Russia poured over the border.
But, you know, if Greece can afford it, Greece really can't afford much. If Greece can afford it,
yeah,
then...
but Greece's not exactly using its own money, is it?
No, well, that's true.
We're all affording for Greece. Let's move into the paper, page 2 of the Times. Another NHS story. This one looking at pharmacists replacing GPs.
In today's papers, it has to be said, I mean, we did say this before, but it has to be said that all the papers have different stories today. It's a rare day when the papers aren't all just about Trump or all about Brexit. But there have been a myriad of different stories about salami slicing in the NHS, provision in the NHS being cut back. This is just one of them. In fact, these are 2 of them.
Yeah.
Apparently, you know, health chiefs in the southwest want doctors to cut their appointments by 27%, and so are getting in other health professionals, counsellors, nurses, pharmacists to replace GPs. This is such bad news. We have really bad cancer detection rates in the UK, for example. It is not going to help if people feel that they cannot go to their doctors when they have worries or concerns, if there is an extra layer before they eventually end up going to their doctors. We should be able to go and see our GP. They are meant to be the first point of call. It shouldn't be because of budgetary concerns. It should be because of practical concerns. But it shouldn't be. We shouldn't be worried about budgets.
But we're already being told that, you know, we can see pharmacists in situ in supermarkets or wherever, and that should sort of be the first port of call.
Can I disagree with you?
Yeah, of course you can disagree. That's what you're here for.
I've got to disagree with you. I think this is actually long overdue. Pharmacists and nurse practitioners are extremely highly qualified
individuals. But surely it depends what's wrong with you.
Yeah, well, the Southwest health chiefs, and by the way, this is going to happen right across the NHS in England, are not saying that all first contact with the NHS must be through this. This is about appropriate placement of professionals who can much better help people who don't have to go and clog up GP surgeries with a simple thing that a pharmacy. And the pharmacists in this country are extremely highly regulated, extremely highly trained, and often people who've, you know, gone through an awful amount of training and very experienced, and can do the kind of work that so that we don't have to clog up GP surgeries who should be spending their time spending more time examining people.
But what worries me is there is a rhetoric at the moment. I mean, Jeremy Hunt said this when there was the news last month about, you know, appalling waiting times in A&E, and there was this culture of blaming us for clogging up services. That's the problem. The problem isn't that the services are underfunded. The problem is us, that we're going there, then we don't need it. The fact is, you should be able to go and see your GP. And, you know, when I ring up my GP for an appointment, they say to me on the phone, is it an emergency? And I want to say, no, it's not an emergency, because if it was an emergency, I'd go to A&E. I'm going to see you because, you know, you shouldn't be in a position where you feel you can't talk to a doctor, and especially when we've got things where, you know, you can have little... I have a friend of mine who had a pain in her chest for a while, didn't go and see the doctor. When she eventually did, it turns out she has cancer because of it. You should feel like you can, you know, you shouldn't be fobbed off or made to feel like you shouldn't be bothering your doctor because you're a burden.
Well, there's no suggestion here that if you do insist on seeing a doctor, that will be denied you, and you have to see a pharmacist or a nurse first of all. So you would imagine that the patient would still have the choice. It's about a culture of making people feel like, you know, they shouldn't really bother doctors.
OK, but what I'm saying is that in the case of your friend, if she'd gone to a pharmacist, I'm pretty prepared to bet whatever you like that a pharmacist, an experienced pharmacist, would have been able to say, that is not something I can deal with, and I therefore think you should go to the GP. But
then she would have wasted that time going to the pharmacist first. It might have just been a day, but if it's an aggressive cancer, that's a day that you can ill afford to miss.
The basic fact is we don't have enough GPs, and it is right that we make sure that health professionals who may not be GP by their name but have got great experience can actually take the pressure off so that your friend can get an important diagnosis from a GP. So there.
You're going to agree to disagree?
We're going to have to.
I think there should just be some... It should be better funded. It should be better funded so we can all go and talk to doctors.
But it's never going to be better funded because...
Well, even that's rationed because you go and you're only really allowed 3 minutes.
Well, it's 8 minutes in England is the time. And even that... And as you say, it's rationed and there's a never-ending requirement for money. So where do you cut off the line? You know, we can't be taxed to death in this country. And
no, but we can be taxed a little bit more. And I think a lot of people, if they were told that there was a little bit in their taxes that went specifically to the NHS...
But you said yourself, part of the problem is not finances,
part of the problem is not, but in this particular case, this isn't to do with...
What do you think the money's going to go for? Do you think the money's going to go on better care? The money, if you increase taxes, the money is going to go on bigger salaries and poorer management and greater bureaucracy. It's not going to make a nurse or a doctor do their job better. It's not about money.
It's not only about money, but money helps.
George and Jenny, we're going to take a break now. You can discuss it in the break, because I'm sure you still will be. Still to come much more, including why food may cost you an extra £5 a week. Welcome back to the press preview. We're taking a look at the papers with George Pascoe-Watson and Jenny Kleeman. We're going to have a look at the Sun now, talking about food prices.
Yeah, we don't know much about this story. It just says that food is to cost us an extra £5 a week on the front page there. Milk, fish, veg, cereals, all being blamed on the falling pound. And you can see what's happening here. You know, there's also a risk, I think, in the Brexit outcome that if we start, if we don't have enough people to pick the veg and fruit and flowers that our farmers depend on, and we don't have imported labour to do that picking, then what's going to happen is eventually those farmers will stop growing those crops, and then we'll have to import the food anyway, which will put inflation on the price of food. So any way you look at it, I think the basket of food is probably going to go up, which is, I think, going to disappoint Brexiteers who were hoping that in a brave new world we'd be able to...
Complete opposite.
The complete opposite would happen. And of course, the danger, I think, for the British farming industry is that if you import beef from Argentina and lamb from New Zealand and wherever else, firstly, that's going to undercut potentially the prices of UK farmers. So you'll end up putting them out of jobs, where the Brexiteers wanted us to leave the EU because other people would be put out of jobs. And second of all, of course, we've got brilliant high standards of food production in this country, amongst the best in the world. You change your regime, you begin to let in lower standards of food production, and I don't think that's good for food security and health.
And £5 doesn't seem like an awful lot, but when we've got people increasingly using food banks
is a lot of money.
And having to
£5 a week
banks,
is a lot of money.
You've got to remember, this isn't just food that's going to go up. It's the cost of everything is really going to go up, and a lot of retailers and a lot of manufacturers have been keeping a cap on prices for as long as they can, and particularly over Christmas. But that is all going to change. You know, we cannot avoid the fact that the pound means that prices are going to go up. So, you know, we knew that this was coming and it's on its way.
Let's have a look at the Mail, page 10 and 11 of the Mail. This is the North Korean assassination as it's being reported.
We picked this because of this incredible graphic that they've got in here. Obviously, the new development today is we have a picture of one of the hit women wearing the LOL, laugh out loud jumper. She's the person accused of assassinating Kim Jong-nam. But the fact that they've given it this treatment, it is the stuff of, you know, some spy movie, this assassination, two glamorous women, highly made up, in an airport, the stepbrother of the dictator of North Korea. But the fact is, this is a real person who was murdered.
I mean, it does almost trivialise it. I was going to say, it looks like a cartoon.
Yes, and also nobody knows what happened. Nobody knows how he was poisoned. There are many different reports, and yet they have decided to depict it in this way. And look at her and him with his glasses falling off. Nobody knows what happened. And it actually is pretty brutal and unpleasant what happened. And shows, I mean, it depends how you want to look at it. It's either an insecurity in Pyongyang, a desire to wipe out enemies, or a show of strength. In the same week that North Korea tested missiles, you know, you're bumping off enemies.
As you say, someone has lost their life, and this is a serious story, treated rather flippantly, some might say. We've just got time to have a look at this story in the Mirror. World Cup legend, I'll donate my brain. This is George Cohen, though. Tell us about his story.
Well, there's been a lot around in the last 24 hours about new research which suggests that heading a football can cause long-term brain damage and even lead to dementia. And George Cohen, one of the great 1966 World Cup winners for England, has said he will, to the Mirror, it's a great exclusive for the Mirror, that he will leave his brain to medical science to see if there is any. Now, I think it's worth bearing in mind that in the 1960s and 70s, footballs
they were a lot tougher, weren't they?
Much heavier, different beasts altogether, and I think that repeated heading of that sort of thing is not like it is today. But you have to bear in mind, you know, if you're worried about your kids playing football and getting dementia, these guys were playing every single day of their lives for hours on end. Your kid is not doing that. I hope football and rugby is still safe.
I think they have developed the balls a lot further. Thank you very much, George and Jenny, for taking us through your section of the paper. It's good to see you. Thanks very much. Let's catch up on the weather now for you.